Hi, my name is Wesley, and I'll be presenting on Chinese language, but also Chinese culture today, for intercultural communication. And so let me share my slides here. Yep, it's showing up, and we can get started. Okay. Yes, so the first thing we should ask is what is Chinese? And as we approach Chinese language and culture, it's a giant concept. I think it's nice to get to the foundations. What is Chinese? Well, Chinese is the official language of several countries, including China, Singapore, and Taiwan. These are all very large, very developed, or developing in the case of China, countries with large populations and very important industries, but also amazing food and amazing people. And it's spoken by nearly 1.35 billion people, mainly concentrated in China, the world's largest country so far. When I'm recording this video in 2024, we expect India to surpass China quite soon. And so it's spoken by billions of people, but it's also a character-based language. There are alphabet-based languages like English. We see a set of alphabet, and they're collectively combined. They're combined to form words that have meaning, and the units are alphabets. Um, but Chinese is a character-based language, and so the one word unit has individual meaning. Um, and yes, you can derive it in a similar way. You can derive meaning with, say, English, but it interacts differently in the sense where they are characters instead of um, a numerically limited set of alphabet. And so Chinese is also split up in dialects that are usually broken up by region, or I guess at the provincial level, but even smaller than that, we see different local dialects. Um, and I believe there are on the order of 40 plus dialects within the Chinese language. And so that's just amazing how one language family, or not family, one language can be broken down yet further. English, we only have accents. We don't necessarily have dialects the same way Chinese does. And the two largest ones are Cantonese and Mandarin. Cantonese being spoken in the southern regions and Mandarin's being spoken in the other regions. And so now let's get to the why. Let's get to the why for me. And the first part of this is my ethnography. Now, we just had an ethnography assignment a while back, but the idea is that this is where I come from. My family background is from China and Hong Kong. And because of that, for instance, in my case, in order to communicate with my grandparents, I need to learn Chinese. In order to understand my family history, I need to learn Chinese. And so that's the ethnographic component. But there's also community component. My community has a significant amount of Chinese speakers in it, of Chinese Americans. After all, we are in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so the community is a large part of why I speak Chinese. For instance, when I go to a Chinese restaurant, when I go to Chinatown or Ranch 99 or all of these places, I ought to be able to order food or get my groceries or ask for change, ask whether I need to pay in cash and things like that. And so it's important communally. But but I suppose there's this larger idea of global significance of the Chinese language. And I break this down between current and future. Currently, as it stands in 2024, Chinese is already a gateway to other languages. For instance, Japanese has hiragana. They use Chinese characters with different meanings. Or say Korean, they have similar characters with I guess a different nature, but it's a similar character. And the sounds are quite similar across all East Asian and indeed some Southeast Asian languages as well. Uh, and so it's a gateway to other languages, not necessarily in the way, say, Latin is to all the Romance languages, but I suppose more closely related to how English has many similarities with French, and how English has many similarities with Spanish, and many interactions with them. And that's how it's a gateway, but it's also an access point to, once again, a significant population pool of people across Asia, but also across the world, with Chinese diaspora around the world. And so that's a current importance as it stands, but there's also tremendous future importance as we look forward 10, 20, 30, 100 years from now. Um, what will Chinese be more important then as it is now? I believe as of now, looking into like the 10, 20-year future, it is an unequivocal yes. Now, we can debate whether this is good or bad, how this affects the global world order or democratization or all these grand concepts. No, let's avoid that for a moment, and let's concede a level of inevitability. Chinese will have increasing utility in the geopolitical realm, of course, but also in the demographic realm. The Chinese population is increasing. Not necessarily in China, but China again still has a few billion people, or um, millions of people, and the diaspora around the world. So it's important geopolitically and demographically. But there's also this very important idea of Eastern and Western. There are Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy, Western medicine and Eastern medicine, Western, say, social norms and Eastern social norms. Someone from Japan and someone from China with much more similar social norms and familial norms than someone between, say, an English guy and an Irish guy. The cultural similarities between uh, Eastern and Western subcultures is significant, but there remains a large delta, a large gap between Eastern and Western thought. And so currently I believe that there's this idea of synchronizing the two, of uniting the two using the Chinese language. For instance, the classical example is this, and this is especially true for me, someone passionate about philosophy. We read a lot of Aristotle. We read, say, his Politics or Nicomachean Ethics, but we lack exposure to an entirely new vantage point, to an entirely new perspective. Now, I put Sun Tzu here. He's most known for Art of War, but perhaps a better example would be Confucius. Right? They have a completely different worldview from the ancient thinkers. And and so we talk about opening our minds, we talk about engagement. I think we're missing out on a large part of engagement when we don't engage different lines of thought, radically different lines of thought. Um, for instance, Confucius emphasizes this idea of ren, or well, I guess the literal meaning is people, but it's this idea of a soul, a heart, and how you nurture it. And yes, it's I suppose, I suppose you can sort of parallel it into various Western philosophical concepts, but I think it's foundationally and indeed qualitatively different. And so Chinese is a way to abridge the two, or really to expand our understanding of the interactions of the world. But yes, it's all this. Yes, it's important. Or the reason why I speak Chinese is yes, because my family history, because of where I'm situated here in the SF Bay area, because of all the logical reasons, all the political and so forth, all these reasons. But But as I think about it, I'm searching for this deeper ontological meaning, and I believe it's rested in the beauty of the Chinese language. And I'll explain this more. The first is hidden stories. It's stories embedded within the characters. And so there are characters and radicals. The one on the bottom right of the slide is a radical, but also a character, and the one on the top is a character. The one on the bottom, the sound for it, the way you pronounce it is mu. But before we get to the meaning, can I encourage all of you to pause this video and guess what you think based on how the word looks. What do you think it means? Okay. So this character actually means wood or mu. If you add a few more elements to it, it becomes tree. And we see this very clearly. We see the core roots of the tree, the centerpiece. And then we see these branches sticking out, and that forms mu or wood. The top one, can anyone guess what? Well, you need some context for this one. The top part with the little square and the cross in between, that means field. And the bottom means, or li, means strength. And so we have field and strength. But this character, or non, actually means male or male or guy. And the reason behind this is because men were the ones who worked the bottom, the field. And so we see these pictures, these images within the characters, and I believe there's tremendous beauty, tremendous history, but also tremendous intellect in imbuing these stories into these characters. Um, but But that aside, I think separately, there's also this idea of elegance, right? The flow of the characters, in some cases, the symmetry, but also the rhythm. The rhythm that comes with writing it out is tremendously elegant, smooth, and I think there's artistic, but also natural beauty to the Chinese language. And indeed, this is why the art of calligraphy is just such a tremendous field today. Now, don't ask me to do calligraphy. I can't. I'm just saying it's beautiful here. Okay, let's get to some practice. Like the other sentences, we need pronouns or nouns, you need verbs, and you need another article or another noun to modify it. And so let's start with the pronouns. I is 我. That's how you say the character over there. It's 我. And then you do something. So I wrote love because um, hopefully in the near future you get to communicate that you love someone. After all, we're called to love other people. And so you'd say 我, and then the word for love is I. And then you add you, I love you, and it becomes 我爱你. You guys see how that works? 我爱你. Okay, let's try another one. Oh, by the way, the pronoun for you is pronounced ni, and the pronouns for them or him, but also her, is pronounced ta. Okay, and so let's try another one. So we use 我, I need something, or I want something. Well, but let's use need. I put need there. The term for need are two characters. It's 需要, right? So I can say 我 需要你. I need you. Okay. And the last example is actually quite fun. It's 我不会说中文. Okay. So we know what 我 is. That means I. I'll just tell you straight off the bat that 中文 means Chinese. Could anyone guess what those middle three characters are after 我 and after 中文? 不 means no. 会 means can. And 说 means speak. And so combined together, we get 我不会说中文. It means I cannot speak Chinese. But I should have added a fourth sentence there, which is 我会说中文. That means I can speak Chinese. And I hope all of you can get there one day, because Chinese is truly a beautiful language and a very necessary language. And so my final encouragement to you is keep practicing Chinese. A few pointers is, yes, okay. I sort of lied here, but you get the root concept. You should memorize characters. I don't think there's an easy replacement for it, but as you memorize, remember to visualize. Again, as we saw earlier, there are meanings in the characters, and if you visualize, you get to appreciate the beauty as you learn the language. And indeed, visualizing is how you gain deeper understanding of the context and the situations where the character may be useful. But also practice with others. We all have the tremendous blessing of being in the Bay Area, of being in the state of California, and there's a lot of people who speak Chinese, and so practice with other people. But also practice on your own, as with cultivating any habit or learning any new skill, you need to practice. And so keep practicing. But of course, it's also important to remember, and we have to be encouraged. We have to stay encouraged and stay positive. Chinese is a very hard language to learn from English. You will be starting from essentially zero. Because again, character versus alphabet, right? You are starting from zero. And so the more you build, you're making a lot of progress. You learning one character is 100% increase in progress. And so stay positive about your mindset. Have that positive mindset in approaching learning Chinese. And I leave you with this Kung Fu Panda quote. It comes from the turtle. It says, "You must believe. First, you must believe that Chinese is a very large language, that Chinese is a very important language in many different ways, but also that Chinese is a very beautiful language. And you must believe in yourself in practicing Chinese. Um, and so you must believe. All right, that's it from me. Thank you so much. And go learn some Chinese. 谢谢你们.